Let's get on to main topic number 1. And our first main topic today gets submitted to us by Stephen Calderon. And Stephen Calderon writes, what are your thoughts on the farewell director Lulu Wang, Lulu Wang, who is just amazing, by the way, Lulu Wang criticizing Ron Howard's decision to direct a biopic of Chinese pianist Lang Lang? Should Ron step down and have an Asian director take over the project? All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And yes, this is really interesting here. So the basic gist is this. Celebrated pianist Lang Lang, he put out a memoir. Ron Howard is going to be making and directing a film, a biopic based on his life. And what has happened is that Lulu Wang has come out, the director of The Farewell. And by the way, let me say this. If you guys have not seen The Farewell, what the hell are you waiting for? If you've not seen Lulu Wang's film, The Farewell, I don't know if you're waiting for a handwritten invitation from Awkwafina. This movie is one of the more beautiful movies I've seen in a long time. It is just simply a beautiful film. It's really something special when a movie can make you feel. And The Farewell is a movie that made me feel. And it had my wife bawling in tears, but it had me, I was feeling the feels. Believe that. And you know, up until that point, I didn't get, why is Awkwafina, why is this kid getting these roles? I mean, I hadn't been really impressed by her or something. And then I saw her in The Farewell. I'm like, holy crap. She's fantastic in this movie. Like, she's a force of nature. And I suddenly, just like that, became a big fan of Awkwafina. So that was good too. So just as a little preface to all this, if you have not seen The Farewell, you really must go and watch The Farewell. Here's the problem. And this is what comes up here. So as I just mentioned, Lulu Wang, the director of The Farewell, had some comments about the fact that Ron Howard, one of the more celebrated directors ever, the fact that Ron Howard was going to be directing this movie about Lang Lang. And she came out pretty stinging, and she kept talking on Twitter. It came out as a series of tweets. It got more and more, you could tell, angry and more frustrated. And you see the headline here in IndieWire, Lulu Wang speaks out against Ron Howard directing a biopic of Chinese pianist Lang Lang. Now, if we go down and take a look at what her actual tweets were, it starts off, you could tell she didn't like it, but it starts off fairly civil. As a classically trained pianist born in China, I believe it's impossible to tell Lang Lang's story without an intimate understanding of Chinese culture and the impact of the Cultural Revolution on artists and intellectuals and the effects of Western imperialism. Just saying. So, okay, so she comes out and takes a swipe. I mean, she's clearly taking a swipe at Ron Howard in response to the story in The Hollywood Reporter that Ron Howard was going to be directing this. She decides to come in and take a swipe at him. She continues on, though. She goes, I'm not saying this because I want to direct the movie. I do not. I just don't think these are the artists to grapple. She just basically said Ron Howard's not the guy to do this without using his name. I just don't think these are the artists to grapple with the cultural specificities of the Northeast China, where Lang Lang and my family are from, or with the cultural aspects of physical violence in his upbringing. Then you could start hearing the frustration in her voice as she went on to her last tweet. Have we learned nothing from Mulan? I haven't said anything because yes, representation and many people I love are involved, but I just have to, because 2020, man, and I'm fucking exhausted. So clearly you could start to hear the frustration and the indignation in her voice pick up there a little bit. Now, let me just say off the top here again, just like I was saying before, if you have not seen Lulu Wang's movie, The Farewell, you absolutely must. It is a masterpiece. I mean, and I think people use that word too loosely, but it's a masterpiece in filmmaking. It is a low budget, simple story that just takes you on an emotional journey that is beautiful, and you smile and your heart smiles and you want to cry at the same time. It's an absolutely beautiful film, and I cannot wait to see more work from Lulu Wang. Let's just be very clear about that. Another thing we need to be very clear of is this, is that in this environment, in this environment that we're in Hollywood and whatever, there is no denying that there has been, for over a century in Hollywood, an intentional, specific, and aggressive agenda in Hollywood of exclusion. There's no way around that, and there's no denying it. All right? There's just no denying it. You can try to spin it however you want, but for over a century, there has been a straight up, flat out agenda in Hollywood for over 100 years to keep women out, to keep black people out, to keep Asians out, to keep anybody that don't look like me out. There has been that aggressive agenda. And that's finally being addressed these days. We're finally seeing that agenda being brought down. And then some stupid people see the ending of that agenda saying, there's a pro-woman agenda. No, no, no. There's not some pro-woman agenda going on. We are just looking at the process of ending a century-long agenda of keeping everybody else out. We're looking at the ending of an agenda of exclusion that has been around for far too long, and it needs to be stopped. This is also today a Hollywood that needs more diversity. It needs more representation. As Robert Meyer Burnett always says, when you have more diversity and you have more representation, when you have different artists from different backgrounds telling stories, you get richer, better stories. You just do. We need to end that century-old agenda, and we need to see a Hollywood that does have more opportunities for different types of filmmakers and different types of storytellers to give us what we all really long for, new, original, different stories. And we need that, and we do. And it's important that I say all that first and up front. Because I've got to say, I 1000% disagree with what Lulu Wang is saying here. The implied suggestion of what Lulu Wang is saying, and let me just repeat her words again. I don't think these are the artists to grapple with these issues because that's not where they're from. You know, Ron Howard's not Chinese. Ron Howard isn't from there. Ron Howard doesn't get it. That's the implied message of what Lulu Wang is writing. Ron Howard doesn't get it, therefore he should not be directing this. I mean, she says, I don't believe these are the artists to grapple with this. She's saying Ron Howard's the wrong guy. Why? Because that's not where he's from. That's not his ethnicity. And because that's not where he's from and that's not his ethnicity, he can't possibly understand. And if he can't possibly understand, then he's the wrong guy to tell this story. And I take issue with that on a couple of levels. The first thing I want to point out here is that this whole movie that Ron Howard's going to make is based on the memoirs that Lang Lang wrote himself. This movie's about Lang Lang. This is about him. He wrote it. This whole movie is based on his memoirs. Are we saying that Lang Lang is not the one to stretch out and sketch out the story of his own life? Of course he is. Of course he is. On top of that, Lang Lang, who is also an executive producer on this movie, came out and said the following. This is taken from the Hollywood Reporter. Dream big, work hard, and always believe in yourself. This movie, thanks to Ron Howard's vision, will inspire young people around the world to follow their dreams and never forget they are one in a million. This is Lang Lang, the guy who this movie's about, the guy who wrote the memoirs that is going to be the basis of this movie, who is an executive producer on this thing. This is his words. This thing's going to be great because of Ron Howard's vision. So obviously he's met with Ron Howard and all that kind of stuff. But it brings up a wider issue as well. While I firmly advocate strongly that Hollywood is a place that needs to become a more diverse playground for everybody to come in and get involved and to tell their stories and stuff like that. We need more diversity in our storytellers. We have to have it. I am a strong advocate for all of that. I get accused often of being too much of an advocate for that. Screw off. I don't care. But I also don't think the effective way to do that is to say, because you guys remember a while ago, there was that Scarlett Johansson controversy that she was going to play a transgendered character. And there was this big uproar. You're not transgendered, so you shouldn't be allowed to play that role. I'm like, whoa, time out. I firmly believe that there should be more roles for transgender people in the business and everybody else. But she's one of the greatest actresses in the world. The job of an actor is to play somebody they aren't. That's what an actor does. An actor takes on a role and plays a role of somebody that they aren't actually in real life. That's what an actor does. The job of a director is to tell stories. And some are better suited and a better fit to tell certain stories than others. I'm not saying that's not the case. But let's look at Ron Howard for a second. Let's look at a couple of Ron Howard films, shall we? Ron Howard made a movie called Apollo 13. A movie that my wife and I, Ann, just went to go watch at the drive-in again. And it's fantastic. It's a great movie. But couldn't you say, well, Ron Howard isn't an astronaut. He didn't work for NASA. What does Ron Howard know about the actual space race? What does Ron Howard know about actually being there in Mission Command? What does Ron Howard know about actually being in a capsule that's hurling off towards space? What does Ron Howard know about any of that? Well, Ron Howard's a storyteller. He's there to tell stories. Ron Howard also made a fabulous movie that I completely love called Backdraft. It might be my favorite Ron Howard movie is Backdraft. You go, we go. I love Backdraft. But maybe you could say, well, what the hell does Ron Howard know about being a firefighter? If you're going to make a movie about firefighters and their daily experience and the terror they face and the bravery they have to show, have you ever been a fireman, Ron Howard? Have you ever lived in that environment? Have you ever lived in that situation? Have you ever taken a hose or an axe or an air pack and rushed into a burning building? What do you know about making the backdraft, Ron Howard? What do you know about it? Well, Ron Howard's a storyteller. So he tells the story and he told it great. And Backdraft is probably my favorite movie of Ron Howard's. But let's go a little bit different here for a second. Let's take a look at a master filmmaker like Ang Lee. All right, let's look at a master filmmaker like Ang Lee. Born and raised in Taiwan, right? Later in his life, he moved to the US and did some studying in the US, but born and raised in Taiwan. What was one of the first main films that Ang Lee got a lot of notoriety for, like worldwide recognition for? Sense and Sensibility, an 18th century woman's story taking place in England, told by Jane Austen. What could somebody could ask? What the hell does this guy who's born and raised in Taiwan know about the experiences of being a woman in 18th century England? What on earth could Ang Lee possibly know? I mean, really know about a woman's experience in 18th century England and written by Jane Austen, an English woman. What could he possibly know about that? Well, what was the results? Ang Lee is a master storyteller. Sense and Sensibility got nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. And it won, I think, one or two of the major awards as well. I think it got nominated for like 6 or 7 awards. And it was nominated for Best Picture, and it really put Ang Lee on the map. No, Ang Lee did not grow up as an 18th century English woman, but he's a master storyteller. That's what master storytellers do. To accentuate that point, let's look at another film by Ang Lee. What does this guy born and raised in Taiwan know about American gay cowboys? I'm talking about Brokeback Mountain. What on earth can this dude born in Taiwan, raised in Taiwan, know about gay cowboys in America? Is he gay? Going on 40 years of marriage with a couple of kids? No? Well, then he won't know how to tell this story. He simply will not know how to do this. He's the wrong guy. What happened? Brokeback Mountain got nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. Some people feel it should have won Best Picture at the Academy Awards. It also had a ton of nominations. Let me bring up the nominations here, because this is an impressive list for Brokeback Mountain. It was nominated, first of all, it won Best Music for the Score. It won Best Screenplay. And Ang Lee won Best Director of the Year that year. And of course, as the director, directing Heath Ledger and Jake Gyllenhaal and Michelle Williams, what happened? Well, all of them got nominated. It got nominated for Best Picture. Heath Ledger got nominated for Best Lead Actor. Jake Gyllenhaal got nominated for Best Supporting Actor. Michelle Williams got nominated for Best Actress. I mean, that's all that he did. This guy, born and raised in Taiwan, who don't know crap about American gay cowboys, he only went on to direct one of the more celebrated films of that decade. That's what he did. Why? Not because he was born and raised in Taiwan, but because he's a master storyteller. I tell this story a lot, but it's applicable here. When I had Kevin Feige and James Gunn and Chris Pratt in my studio to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy, I asked Kevin Feige, I said, what made you comfortable going with this $100+ million film with a director like James Gunn, who has never directed anything but really small, little, lower budget films? What made him the right guy? And Kevin Feige looked at me and said, a good storyteller is a good storyteller. Doesn't matter how big the budget is. Doesn't matter what the subject matter is. A good storyteller is a good storyteller. What did Steven Spielberg know about concentration camps? Now you can say, well, his family was Jewish. Okay, so what you're telling me is that Steven Spielberg had people informing him so he could tell the best story he could. Well, that's what great directors do. You don't think Ang Lee brought in some really good consultants to work with him to make sure he was capturing certain aspects right? Of course he did. You don't think Ron Howard probably had a number of real firefighters working with him that he would consult with to make sure he was capturing the proper aspects of what it might be like as a firefighter doing backdraft? Of course he did. Or people with the space program with Apollo 13? Of course he did. And who better to have working with him than Lang Lang himself? And the whole movie's being based on what Lang Lang wrote. And he's there, an executive producer. And of course he's going to be consulting with him every step of the way. And so what do you need? You need somebody who can take all of that and be a master storyteller. Ron Howard, and I don't love every single movie Ron Howard's ever done, but Ron Howard's a master storyteller. So I got to say, while I super respect Lulu Wang, especially as a filmmaker, and I get where she's coming from, I have to 1000% disagree. Because here's the thing. What are we trying to propose? Are we trying to propose that gay movies that revolve around gay characters, should only be directed by gay people? Are we saying that any movie about a black character should only be directed by black characters? Are we saying that any film with an Asian character should only be directed by an Asian director? Because if we do, then we get endangered with, I don't know, for lack of a better word, we become in danger of creating an entertainment segregation, where it's like, oh, if an Asian person, it's got to be Asian. Because what's the ramification of that? Oh, if it's a movie with a white lead, it's got to be a white director. Of course not. That would be idiotic. Of course we don't want that. So I love the fact that we're getting new movies that focus on black characters, that we're getting new movies focused on Asian characters. And I love the fact that those are opening doors, that we can get black filmmakers an opportunity to get a foot in the door and tell stories, that we get to get Asian filmmakers, like in the case of Shang-Chi, we get to get Asian filmmakers in there too. But I do not believe it should become a question of exclusiveness. Because we're not doing anything to end this stupid century-old agenda of exclusion if all we do is create a new form of exclusion. That is counterproductive. It's counterproductive to what we should be doing and where we should be going. Not setting up a new entertainment segregation where it's like, okay, women can direct women movies. Black directors can direct black movies. and white movies will be directed by white people. There, everybody got their little thing. No, we don't need that. So while if they announced an Asian director for directing Lang Lang, great. I mean, if that opens the door for somebody else to do it, but it should not be exclusively that. I don't think that we should be complaining if a project like Lang Lang's biography being taken over by one of the more celebrated directors of our time should be looked at as a bad thing. I don't believe ending exclusion is helped by creating a new sense of exclusion. I don't believe that Ang Lee should not have directed Brokeback Mountain. I don't believe that he shouldn't have directed Sense and Sensibility. You see what I'm saying? So with all due respect, and I mean that honestly, I'm not being facetious, with all due respect, I 1000% disagree with Lulu Wang. I completely disagree with her. I understand the frustration. I can't relate because I get to be a white guy in this culture. So what do I fully understand? But I still just don't believe that it's productive. I don't believe that attitude is productive in ending this ridiculous century-old agenda of exclusion. And anyway, that's just my thoughts on it. I've rambled on about that a lot. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people with a lot of opinions on this. Anyway, guys, jump down into the comments section below and let me know why I'm wrong. All right, guys.